cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, really trying.
Howdy, welcome to Many Aggies, One World, a show about the stories and the lessons of those who have journeyed around the world. I'm Ria here with Jose, and today we're going to be speaking with Leslie Shelton, our new LT Jordan advisor who's had many experiences abroad. These experiences have helped inform her life and career choices, and we wanted to take the opportunity today to learn more about her impact on international students and Aggies alike.
Howdy, welcome to a new episode of Many Aggies, One World. We're here with LT Jordan. My name is Jose Rodriguez. I'm a history major and I'm in the on-campus subcommittee.
My name's Ria. I'm graduating May of 2025. I'm an international studies major and I'm the on-campus programming executive.
And my name is Leslie Shelton. I am the director of the LT Jordan Institute for International Awareness.
Yeah, so we're starting this semester up with another episode, and we just wanted to bring our new advisor, Leslie, on to ask her a few questions about her time abroad and teaching and just everything about her life. So we have a few questions for you.
Sure.
If you want to get started.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So you just started a couple months ago with us.
Yes.
But I think in the time that, we've talked, we've got to know a little bit more about your time helping international students.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you have taught international students before.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So how was that developing curriculum for them when you were teaching them about American life and stuff abroad? How did that kind of work?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's become pretty common now for a lot of universities to offer a freshman year seminar type class. When you're a high school student coming into college, there's a lot of adjustments, even just getting used to living away from your family, different study habits, all of those things. So international students have those same, things to learn when they come to college here in the US, but they also have that added cultural difference to adjust to as well. And also sometimes maybe the academic style is different as well from maybe their home country. A really great example of this is in the US, it's very common if you don't understand something to just raise your hand and ask a question in the class, but in maybe other cultures that might be a sign of disrespect to the professor. And so, there's also those cultural things, not just in social life, but also in the classroom setting, how to adapt to that. So in a freshman year seminar for a standard college student, again, you're learning some of those study habits and just how to adapt to campus life. And so, when we are working with international students, and at my previous school where I taught, it basically was a freshman year seminar for students in our intensive English program. We covered a lot of those same topics, but then we also addressed the cultural changes as well that students would experience during their time. If you've ever traveled to another country and spent a significant amount of time there, you know that you'll go through something called culture shock. And, when you first get to the new culture or new country, it might be very exciting because everything's new and different and wow, this is such a cool way to live. It's really different from what I'm used to. But once you've maybe been there for 2 months, 6 months, some of those things that were seen as really unique or novel might kind of wear on you a little bit and you might not enjoy them as much as you did initially. Mm-hmm. One specific example from my time living overseas in China, when I got there, the way people drive and the traffic is very different than here in the US. And at first it was really fun and exciting and cool. But then after a few months of enduring it on my bike and just trying to get used to swerving away from cars and things like that, it wasn't maybe as fun as it had been initially. And so international students experience those same things when they come here to the US. So really just, you can't necessarily touch on every single thing that they're gonna experience might be different. Because of course you have students coming to the US from so many different cultures. Mm-hmm. And so what they all are adapting to might be different based on their home country. And so, you can't necessarily touch on all the specifics, but you do wanna kind of touch on kind of those broad strokes of, time orientation. In the US, it's seen as polite to get there 5-10 minutes early for a meeting or for class, whereas maybe in other cultures, they might see that differently. And so kind of touching on those broad strokes and helping them to have a different framework in approaching their social setting, their classroom setting, so that they can be successful. You know, coming to college and being successful isn't just about getting good grades in your class. You know, if you didn't feel very connected socially with friends and have a good network, good roommates, positive relationships with those in your class or your professors and your advisors, you know, you might feel really lonely and you might not have a great experience. And so really touching on those social aspects of adapting in a freshman year seminar type class for international students is just as important as touching on, you know, the importance of having good study habits and all of those things related to the classroom as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was gonna ask you about, you were mentioning some of the things that once you come here, the novel kinds of American things. Do you remember any specifics from students that like they found to be particularly interesting when they came here, or?
Yeah, so I think I've worked with international students in a few different places, and I think a lot of them maybe have really, especially when it comes to maybe the challenges, public transportation. In a lot of places, you know, students are really accustomed to having really good public transportation or being able to ride their bikes very easily to wherever they're trying to go to pick up groceries or whatever it might be. But in the U.S., we don't necessarily, in some places it's different, and they do have a really well established public transportation system, but especially like here in, you know, Texas, maybe it isn't as well established. And so students have a hard time getting to the places that they want to go if they don't have a car, and getting the foods that they're used to. I think, for example, you know, students are really eager to try some of those standard American foods like pizza, hamburgers, etc. But as anyone would, and as college students do, you know, you miss your family's home cooking and everything, and so they get really tired, I think, sometimes of those foods, because a lot of times maybe they are, you know, if they're living on campus and they can't go out to the grocery store very easily because of public transit, then they're eating on campus for almost all of their meals, and so they're missing those home foods. So something that was maybe really fun to finally get to experience, something traditional American, you know, after a few months of eating pizza, you're like, okay, I'm ready for something different. I really wish my mom was here to cook me something, you know. So I think that's a pretty standard one for a lot of students. Food.
What was your biggest culture shock other than the driving?
The driving was I didn't drive there. I wouldn't have felt very confident driving because the rules are very different, and I did ride my bike quite a bit, which most of the time, you know, was good. I also did take the bus too. So getting used to the driving was quite different. And then also I lived in a place where there weren't very many foreigners. And so for people, it was very maybe startling for them to see, you know, in China, someone with blonde hair and blue eyes. And so a lot of people would stop me to take pictures with me and, you know, want to touch my hair. And, you know, that's definitely not something I experienced here in the U.S. And so, you know, at first you're like, oh, you know, that's fun or whatever. Yeah, I'll take a picture with you. But I think, after a few months, you're kind of like, okay, another picture. And please, you know, please don't touch my hair or my face, you know. So I think, those types of things. And again, that's one of the things where I just had to remind myself, you know, culturally, it's something that's, you know, when you're thinking about other cultures, it's not a matter of right and wrong, it's just different, right? And especially when I would remind myself, okay, I'm living in a place where there are not very many Westerners, and so to see me on this street is kind of a shock, you know, if you're 80 years old and you've never seen a Westerner before. And so just trying to put myself in their shoes and to empathize a little bit so that I wouldn't get frustrated with those differences. But you know, wherever you live, whether in your home culture or overseas, you have good and bad days. And so, you know, you just have to give yourself space to have a bad day and journal about it, or, you know, binge watch a favorite TV show as you cry, you know, or whatever it might be, and or call your mom or a family member that, you know, feels comfortable to talk to. So, you know, you just have to also give yourself that space to be able to process what you're going through, because especially if you've never visited another culture and lived in a different environment, there are a lot of changes to get used to, and so you're going to have better days, and you're going to have days that aren't as fun, and give yourself space to have those moments. So yeah, and save people that you can talk to when you have those days too. So.
That's great. Yeah. I think very like applicable to most life situations.
Yeah.
But the place that you lived in China, was it a very rural area or like a really
Great
small
question.
kind of area too?
So I lived in Inner Mongolia. I lived in the capital city of Hohhot. And by Chinese standards, it's a small city, but it does have about 2.5 million people.
Oh, wow.
So for American standards, not small.
Yeah.
But so it was an urban center. It, I feel like where I lived was such an interesting place because the time that I was living there, which was, I moved there in 2010 and lived there till 2012. So it has changed a lot since then, of course, as most places have in 12 years. But when I lived there, it was really developing a lot. And so it was this very interesting dichotomy of new China meets old China. So you would have these tall skyscraper, 30-foot tall building, or 30-story tall buildings, but then there would be people coming in from the rural areas, like with their donkey and their cart of like vegetables that they were coming in town to sell. And so, it was becoming very wealthy because they had discovered, there's a lot of coal and rare earth in that area as well. And so a lot of natural resources. And so then you'd see the Porsche drive down the street as well. And so it was just such an interesting, an interesting place to live because it was urban, but it had been growing and developing really quickly and rapidly, and so it had been changing a lot. And so just even the locals getting used to seeing all of the changes. And even when I lived there, right towards the end of the time that I lived there, they started introducing double-decker buses because the traffic was getting so bad because of many more people were able to purchase cars, and so many more people were driving rather than riding their bikes or taking public transit. And so it was a really unique place. There's also, Inner Mongolia is an autonomous region in China. And so there are 5 autonomous regions which have large minority presence. And so Inner Mongolia is one of those. They have a large Mongolian population. And so when you are in the city, all the street signs and the store signs are both in Chinese characters and also in Mongolian script. And then there's kind of different pockets of Mongolian influence. And then we also had an ethnic group called the Hui, which is a Muslim people group in China. And so it was a really cool city to live in because you got to, not only experience, kind of mainstream Han Chinese culture, but you also got to experience some of the different cultures that are represented within China as well. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
So were you a student when you went to China, or were you a advisor?
Yeah, great question. So my first time that I went to China, I was in college, so I did go abroad as a college student. And that's really what made me want to move overseas. I just had such a great experience when I went. And that's really what made me want to move overseas. I just had such a great experience when I went. And I just love Chinese culture. I love the food, the people, just the sights and experience. So I definitely knew that I wanted to go back after I graduated. And so I did go as a teacher. I taught English there at the Inner Mongolia Agricultural University. So I stuck with the ag school. And yeah, it was really a lot of fun. There also were its challenges. It was my first job out of college, and so as with any lifestyle change, you're getting used to kind of new rhythms. It was a nice transition because I was teaching, and so I wasn't necessarily working 8 to 5, very similar to here. Like I would have my class times, and I had to do some prep before and grading and such afterwards, but it was a nice kind of transition into getting used to working. And I really love my students too. At the Agricultural University, there were a lot of groups represented, including Han Chinese and Mongolian, because Mongolians are traditionally nomadic people. I kind of joke that I feel like Inner Mongolia is the Texas of China, because they have a festival in the summer called Nadam, which is kind of like a rodeo in a sense. You know, Mongolians, they have cattle and sheep and horses, so they'll do different events that include their livestock, and they'll do archery and wrestling. The one thing that they have that we don't are camels. So that's really fun. I love their Bactrian camels, so they have the 2 humps, and they're more fuzzy, for the cold, because it gets cold up there. That was an adjustment too, was moving to a northern place and enduring cold weather that I'm not used to here in Texas. But yeah, so a lot of students at the agricultural university were Mongolian students, because they're coming from, you know, more of those ag type backgrounds, and so just really got to enjoy working with students and still getting to be a part of a college environment as a teacher, and get to work with students and help them learn and practice their English. And so, yeah, I had a really amazing experience teaching there. Definitely would recommend to everyone.
That's actually something I'm considering doing too, like after undergrad at some point. But I was wondering, because I've like talked about it with my friends or my parents, but how did you like decide that was something you really wanted to do, and was it something that your parents or friends or people advised you not to do, or like what was people's reaction to it when you said you wanted to go abroad, like right out of college?
I think my parents probably thought I was a little crazy. My parents, they're both engineers, and so and they've worked for the same company basically their whole careers, and so the path that they chose was very different than the path that I embarked on. So I think they were very nervous because they didn't really know what all that entailed. Both of their parents had also been engineers or scientists, and so to them the engineering path was very clear, whereas I was a political science major, so liberal arts, and going abroad and teaching English was very unusual to them. They're like, you know, okay, we don't really know anything about that. So I think, like, for example, the first time that I went to China when I was in college, they were nervous. I don't think at that time they thought I would want to move overseas, but I think they were open to the experience. You know, they had traveled some for work, mostly to Canada and Western Europe. So I think just they understood the benefits of going abroad as a student, and just generally. Then also 2 of my cousins are actually adopted from China, and so my aunt and my grandmother had been there relatively recently compared to the time when I was going, and so they at least knew that we had had family go and have, you know, a good experience there. So I think they were open to it when I first went, but then when I was getting ready to move there, we did have a lot of those conversations, which I think, you know, when you're in college and you're getting ready to embark on your career, you kind of talk it through with your parents, and because, you know, they've been there before maybe in a different way, but they've been through transitions of getting jobs, and so we did talk through that. They had a lot of questions, and I think for me, sometimes the answer was, well, I don't really know, because, you know, I haven't done this, and I don't really know a ton of people who have done this. I knew a few people, and so sometimes the answer was I don't know, but I think ultimately they trusted me to make a wise decision, and they let me do what I felt was the right thing for me, and I really appreciate them kind of allowing me to. I mean, of course I was an adult in 22, but they could have pushed back probably a lot harder than they did, so I am appreciative that they were supportive of my goals and what I felt like was the right path forward for me. And so, but definitely, you know, I was fortunate that I ended up living in the city that I had gone to as a college student, and so I did have some connections in that city, so that was helpful in kind of getting the initial setup with like trying to find a job and getting an apartment and all of that. So I didn't necessarily feel like I was going all on my own, and a lot of, you know, especially teaching and moving abroad is becoming much more common, and so a lot of schools are really set up to attract foreign teachers to come. And so that always helps too when the school that you're working with, helps provide the information and the steps that are necessary in order to get over there. So, yeah.
Nice, yeah.
So why did you choose China out of all the countries in the world?
Yeah, I think I had a friend who had gone to China the year before, and she talked really highly of it. And so, and also having my cousins from China, and we also, my grandparents, they also, my grandfather was a professor, and they always kind of had a love and caring for international students, and so they always had people of other cultures coming through their house, so they had a really close contact that my grandfather worked with, and he was also from China, he and his family, and so I think just kind of that, having those connections prior made that kind of stand out to me a bit, and I definitely didn't know what to expect, but it just, when I was considering where's the right place for me, that's one that definitely stood out, and one that my parents felt comfortable with too, because that was also one of a key factor in college. A lot of you are maybe more dependent or more supported by your parents, and that was the case for me, and so definitely had to get there when I was in college going, and so that was one that they felt comfortable with me going to. So
That's nice.
Nice, yeah. So something that because I actually had the opportunity to go abroad this past summer for my major as well.
Yeah.
And something that I experienced I didn't think would happen would be like all of the international students that I met. At my school, there were people from all different places in the world, and their perception of American people was definitely really interesting. A lot of people kind of took ideas from the media, and they would ask me like, "Oh, well, you don't have a Southern accent," or "Where's your cowboy hat?" or things like that. So when you were there, did you have any people? I know you were talking about like the blonde hair, kind of blue eye thing, but were there any people that made kind of like assumptions about you because you were American and you had to kind of explain things? Or
Yeah, so definitely I feel like a lot of people base their ideas on American culture and lifestyle based on TV, especially. When I lived there, Friends was really popular, and Big Bang Theory. So those are like the two shows that I feel like a lot of people would ask me about, especially Big Bang Theory, because being from Texas, I think Sheldon, it's been a while since I've watched that show, but Sheldon is from Texas, and so they would ask a lot of questions about that. And so there's definitely that perception that, life is like the movies or like TV, and so there's definitely a lot of questions and asking like, oh, is it really like that? And I can't remember anything specifically off the top of my head, but I think, as you get to know someone, I developed a lot of good friendships there. And so as you get to know someone, you realize, okay, maybe things aren't like they are in the movies. And I think one of the stereotypes is that like most people are blonde haired and blue eyed. And so I would tell them like, no, America's really diverse. A really interesting story from when I was there is, so when I was at A&M, I did study Chinese, and so I had like kind of a baseline for living there. Once I got there, I was still like, wait, did I really learn Chinese? Because I can't understand anything that's happening.
Yeah, actually.
But after a few months, and my ears kind of got adjusted to the faster pace, I was like, okay, I know a little bit of what's going on. But there were some basic things like ordering at the restaurants. I was good. But I was with a girl that I had met. She was also American. She's Korean American. So, Asian looking. And we went out to lunch or dinner or something. And the waitress kept talking to her and asking her questions. But she didn't speak any Chinese at all. So then I would answer the questions. And I think she just couldn't, like in her mind, she's like, but this is like the Chinese girl that should be speaking. And so I think, kind of that idea that the U.S. is very like homogenous looking when in fact we're really diverse. So I think that was something that really was interesting to talk to people about, and like, no, yeah, America, like not everyone has blonde hair, and people come from all sorts of backgrounds, including, you know, there's Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, and their families have lived here for generations, and so really helping to kind of paint that broader picture of what the U.S. is like. And because a lot of times they would ask me like, oh, if I go to America, will they know that I'm a foreigner? And I was like, not just by looking at you necessarily, like here you can tell I'm a foreigner, but a lot of people thought I was Russian. It would always be really funny because most people assumed I didn't understand them, which is a fair assumption.
Yeah.
Not many Americans, you know, more, I feel like more and more now people are learning Chinese, but it's maybe not necessarily the top language that everyone is learning or speaking. But so a lot of times people would be talking about me right in front of me. And so there were just so many times where people were like, oh, where do you think she's from? They'd be like, oh, Russia or England. And then I'd like turn and say, no, America. And then they'd be a little shocked and kind of embarrassed. And I'd be like, oh, you don't have to be embarrassed. Like, you know, it's fine. But it was always a funny dynamic because, yeah, most of the time they assumed I was Russian, or because it's closer. And again, there weren't a ton of foreigners in the city that I lived in. So I always had fun when they would be talking about me. Yeah. So I think that was kind of a big assumption. And so it's really, you know, I think that is one of the reasons why I work in international education and love working with international students or students going abroad, is because, you know, we all have preconceived ideas of what different places or different people are like, just based on where we're from and the exposure that we have. And so I love creating those opportunities for other people to experience new cultures, because I know that my eyes were opened. China was the first place that I got to visit internationally, and so just seeing how people live so differently, but they have amazing lives that are also in so many ways very similar to ours, and you know, just still valuing, you know, a lot of the major values that we have, like family and things like that, and how we all in so many ways have commonality more than we have differences. And so just being able to help others to have that experience, and whether it's from my time abroad, or getting to send others abroad, or helping welcome international students here to the U.S. It's just such a great opportunity to see and explore the world in different ways. So
how did you end up from China all the way back to College Station?
Yes, that's a great question. I didn't make it directly back to College Station. I kind of, you know, made my way around the U.S. a little bit too, but I wanted to come back to the U.S. and further my education, so I moved to California and got a degree in intercultural studies. I wasn't really sure where exactly that would take me, if I would end up back overseas or if I would stay in the U.S. working in a cross-cultural context. But I ended up getting a job in Southern California at a university there, with international student services. When I started off in my master's degree, I had kind of no idea that that was a field that you could work in. Like when I was here in College Station, I had international student friends, but I didn't think about the fact that, how, you know, other than hearing maybe their personal stories of how they got here, understanding maybe all of the logistics and behind the scenes that happens on the university side of how they got here. But got a job with international students, and you know, I had the cross-cultural experience, and I had the education, which was really great. And that job really opened up my eyes to the world of immigration advising. You know, when international students come here, they are coming on a student visa. There's a couple different types that they can come on. And there are, of course, a number of rules and regulations that they have to abide by. And so if you have ever thought about maybe wanting to work in higher ed, you know, immigration advising, international student advising is a great entryway into the field, because you really get to have those cross-cultural connections with the students, and then you also get to learn a lot about the laws and what that, you know, how to communicate those to the international students to ensure that they're what's called maintaining their status, which is what all international students need to do in order to stay here in the U.S. and complete their degree. And so got a job at California Baptist University. We had about 300 international students, and so it's a smaller private school, but it was a really great kind of entry into that field. And with a smaller population like that, you really get to know the students really well. And so I just love being able to connect with the students and just getting to know them and helping their journey through their time here and pursuing their education. That's where I taught that class, the freshman year class for them. And so I got to know those students that were in my class even more, and just getting to learn about, why did you want to come to the U.S.? How did you end up in California? And, what their long-term goals were as well. We had a lot of students from India, China, and Rwanda, and so really cool. And we had over 50 countries represented on our campus, so a lot of diversity, but definitely those kind of main groups from China, India, and Rwanda. And so it was just really amazing, again, to continue to kind of broaden my horizons. When I lived in China, I got to travel to Southeastern Asia, so Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, but that really helped me to learn more about other areas of the world, especially India and Rwanda, since we had so many students from there. And yeah, I started in that job and almost never looked back. There is a couple, in any job, there's gonna be times where you think like, what did I do, and
we don't have that moment as our advisor.
Yes, no, I won't have that here. Everything will be perfect always. I'm just declaring it now. But I think too, just kind of getting used to a new job, a new location, and all of those things just took time. But once I kind of got my feet under me and felt like I had some idea of what I was doing, then I never looked back. And I really love working with students. It's so fun. My time in college as an Aggie, class of 2010, was just so formative. The person that I came here as, I definitely grew so much and learned more about myself and the world during my time here. And so that's why I love working with college students, is because it is such an important time in your life when you're trying to figure out what's next for you and where your life is going to go, and or at least what direction are you going to start in. And so I love being able to help guide students through that process, whether that's international students coming here or students going overseas to study or intern or research abroad. It's very fulfilling as a career, because you really get to see people go off and do amazing things. And so that's how I ended up kind of back in College Station. Again, I've worked at a few different schools. And I'm 2 months in here now, and it's really nice to be back in College Station. I do joke about how much it's changed, but it is fun to get to experience Aggie Land again. And so many days I walk from the parking garage where I park, the UCG, into the MSC, and I see Kyle Field as I pass it, and I'm like, I can't believe this is right across the street from my office. And so it's really fun to be back home. So.
Yeah. No, I'm sure just on that walk alone, you probably have so many memories.
Yeah. I was definitely, really into being an Aggie when I was a student here. I went to all the games and was involved in a lot, and just really enjoyed my time here. And so I am glad to be back.
I wondered, did you know about Jordan when you were a student here?
I did not, actually. And so, I feel like I'm really unsure as to how I didn't know, but it's just, again, things have changed so much. I did spend time in the MSC, but maybe I just never made it up to the second floor. So if you're listening, come to the second floor and visit us. But yeah, so I wasn't familiar with Jordan during my time here, but glad I know about it now.
Yeah.
So,
Did you go to the football games after you graduated?
No, because I didn't really live close enough. I just moved back to Texas in 2021. And so I was living out of state, so it was kind of challenging. I did go to some football game, away games, and so when I was living in Southern California, I went to the game where we played UCLA, and were winning by like 30 points and then lost the game. So I did go to that. I went to a bowl game with my family when I came to Houston to visit them over a holiday break, and then I went to an away game at Auburn because I have a friend that works there. So, and that's another fun thing about international education too, is you have colleagues from all over the world, and so, you know, I know people in China, Italy, the UK, Mexico, and so I just know people all over, and so it's really fun to get to stay in touch with them, and if I get to travel back to that place for work or for vacation, then I get to see my connections there, and the schools that I've worked at, maybe the people I worked with there don't work there anymore, and they work at a different school, and so then I have connections throughout the U.S. as well, and so Auburn is one of those, and yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we're kind of talking about your time at A&M. We have just like a few fun kind of on-campus questions, since you were talking about how much it's changed and things.
Yes.
So what do you miss the most about the old campus, like when you were here?
Okay, I was talking with my boss about this a few weeks ago, but during my time here is when they started renovating the MSC, and prior to its renovation, they used to have a coffee shop. Now there's a coffee shop in the Barnes & Noble, but it was not that coffee shop. So I know that there's still a coffee shop, but a different coffee shop that was its own thing, and they had, it was kind of like, almost like a Panera Bread type. They had sandwiches and salads and stuff too, and they had, within the coffee shop, they had a second floor, and so a lot of my friends would go there and hang out and grab lunch, or, you know, just hang out and study or whatever, and so I definitely miss that because it's not here anymore. So, yeah.
And that was in the MSC?
It was, I mean, you couldn't get into it from inside the MSC, so the entry to that place, I can't remember what it's called, and I was talking with my boss to see if she could remember, and she couldn't either, but she remembers it being there. So, so you'd have to enter through the outside, where now I think it's kind of blocked off. If you are in the MSC, there's a courtyard kind of within the middle of the MSC, and I think it is more closed off than it was. Like, I think you used to be able to enter through there from the outside, and there also used to be a fountain there. Yeah. From my pond hopping days.
Yeah, so that was your favorite spot to study?
Yeah, it was my favorite place. One of my favorite places. Also, we're, you know, on the 6th floor of the annex right now, and this was another place I would come and study a lot my freshman year, because I lived on I lived on South Campus, and so this also has changed a lot. We did not have a podcasting studio during my time here, and we actually still had stacks of books and such up here, so this has changed a lot too, and it was another place that I'd come and study. But yeah, but there have been a lot of good changes too. Like, there's a lot more like fun restaurants and stuff and all of that around campus, and even on campus there was only one rec center when I was here. Now there's 3, and so all of those changes are, you know, I'm still absorbing them, but those are some nice ones. So,
If you could bring something like from back then to now, what would you bring?
It would be the coffee shop.
It
was so fun. Yeah, and it just had a nice vibe, you know. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah. So
the only thing I can think of that's like kind of similar to that on campus is the quad books, but even then there isn't anything on the top. It's just like people go study there, and it's just like a multi-story thing. But this sounds
it was like more cozy than the quad books. It was like the quad books, it's very, you know, it's a Starbucks, whereas this was kind of its own little place, and it had like couches and stuff. So
we can go in with some rapid fire questions. These actually have to be rapid fire.
Okay, we'll see. I'll do my best. I'll try not to overthink. My answers.
All right, you got it.
Okay, lanes or canes?
Lanes, of course.
Lanes?
Yeah.
Starbucks or Dunkin' or Dutch?
Starbucks.
Okay.
Okay. What's your favorite season in the year?
Spring. Now that it's springtime, I just feel so happy because the days are long. You know, I'm like, oh, the sun is here.
Yeah.
Okay. Football season or basketball season?
Football.
Harry's or the chicken?
I feel like the chicken. It's a classic, you know. Yeah, I mean, Harry's is a classic too, but yeah, the chicken.
Yeah.
Next questions. Taboo chase or not taboo chase?
I have no idea what that is.
You don't know what boot chasing is?
Oh, to boot chase.
Yeah,
Now
or
I
not to
understand.
boot chase.
Okay. I thought the way you said it, it sounded like one word, taboo chase, and I was like, what is taboo chase?
Taboo chase. Taboo chase.
I did not, but
Yeah.
To each their own.
To each
Yeah,
their
to each their own.
Yeah.
Gotta go for that senior,
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
when you're not a classmate. Yeah. So,
Yeah. How fast was your ring dunk?
I know. It was 1 minute and 10 seconds because I was class of
Oh.
2010, so it was
Okay.
a big deal that I finished on the 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, thoughts on mullets?
They're coming back.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It's a choice.
I agree. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah, so-
it's a choice.
Here's what I'll say. Some people can pull it off,
Yeah.
and there's others who can't. Yeah.
Yeah, like me. Yeah,
Your hair looks
thank you,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show the camera.
Yeah. Side. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. There we go.
What's your favorite Taylor Swift era?
I love Reputation.
Okay.
Yeah, I cannot wait for Taylor's version of that album to come out. I'm also very excited about her new album. I know some people are like,
Hesitant on it.
yeah, they're hesitant or they're disappointed that she announced that rather than Reputation. But I think it'll just make when Reputation comes out all the better.
I've seen some conspiracies though that like within the album she's also gonna announce Reputation. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yes, we'll see. But I'm a big Swiftie. I love Reputation and I really like Midnights too.
Yeah,
And Folklore
that's fair.
Evermore. So
That's the one with the Karma, right?
yeah, Midnights.
Yeah. I like that song.
Yeah.
You're just trying to pretend.
What's your favorite era? Because that'll be the test to see if you know.
Rapid fire.
Yeah,
I'm not a big Swiftie. I just like the song Karma.
And we just lost.
I like the song
chunk of our
Karma. The song
Yeah.
Karma's a banger. I will
Okay,
say that.
okay, yeah.
Okay, well, those are the end of our rapid fire
Okay.
questions. Is there anything you kind of wanted to talk about, like with Jordan and your plans for Jordan before we wrap it up?
Sure, yeah. I feel like we're in a very exciting era of Jordan. I'm really excited to be here and really grateful for everyone who's just been so welcoming and helping me acclimate to life back on campus and getting familiar with Jordan. I was talking to some grad students earlier today, and this wasn't necessarily the case when I set out on my career. A lot of times you have an idea of what you think your career is going to be, and then it ends up being very different.
Yeah.
But I have actually built or rebuilt offices throughout my career in different jobs. And so, all in the field of international education. But at my last school, I was building up our international center. We hadn't had one prior, and so I was the person to come in and establish that after the framework had been set and the funding had been set, and establish the partnerships and start working to kind of centralize our study abroad programs and things like that. And so really I'm excited to kind of do that same thing here at Jordan. The pandemic really took a toll on all international education just because people couldn't travel as easily, and just with the timeline of getting a new director and everything, I know took a while. And so we're in a really exciting rebuilding phase, and I really look forward to working with the student committee to make that a reality. I think we have some really unique programs that I definitely am eager to get the word out to campus, because to be able to do research abroad and get funding for that, funding for research in general can be a challenge, and so especially for students who are trying to get that in many different ways, to be able to provide support to international research is really amazing. And so I feel like definitely trying to get the word out more to students that that's an available option, and also just the on-campus and community programming that we do as well is really amazing and unique, and really important conversations like the one that we just had on human trafficking awareness, and just helping the community know why international awareness and international happenings and different cultures are important to them in their day-to-day life. So I'm really excited about where we're going, and all the places that our students are going to get to go through our programs and how they're going to be impacted through the events and activities that we have on campus. And so, yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. So if you're listening, definitely keep your eye on Jordan and follow us on our Instagram and stay up to date with our podcast and everything, because, yeah, there's going to be really cool opportunities coming in the next few years, next year, especially as we really start to relaunch our programs now. So, yeah.
Sounds great.
Anything more to add? You're good?
I'm good,
Right.
yeah.
So like she said, you can follow us on our socials just at LT Jordan. You can expect another podcast episode coming in the fall. So in addition to this one, there will be more happening in the fall. And yeah, more about on-campus programs. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks and good.
Bye!
Thanks so much again for tuning into our episode. Coming up in our next episode, we have Michelle Vick from the Center for Teaching Excellence as she talks about her experience teaching English abroad in Africa for over a decade. Once again, please make sure to follow us on our socials so you can stay up to date with what we're doing. Our Instagram is at MSCLTJordan, and that's all we have for you today. Thanks and giggle.